Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for making the time to come out to talk to us. So I'm a researcher at VA, and I wanted to share with you and get your reactions about some research that we've done looking at housing instability and use of housing services in VA among transgender and non-transgender veterans. And one of our first findings was looking at just how many people report experiencing housing instability in VA. And we found that among the non-transgender group, it was about 7%, but among the transgender group, it was about 20%. So I just wanted to get your reaction. Are you surprised by that? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Surprised? No. Disappointed? Yes.
Okay. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I guess just like what we seem to fail at as a society is taking care of our kids, our elderly, and our veterans. And that's all across the board. And just some seem to fall through the cracks more than others.
So do you think that among the people who may fall through the cracks, that transgender veterans are within that group of people who
Yes.
are not being so, hence the big disparity we found in people who are experiencing housing instability?
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts about why we might be seeing that great difference between the two groups?
Well, I'm going to say that some of them are being misdiagnosed. As I know that they can be diagnosed as certain anxiety disorders, bipolar, and personality disorders. So, unless the veteran actually knows or communicates properly, they can get misdiagnosed. And being able to come out is all in your comfort level with the people that provide the service.
Right. And sort of the coming out in VA or coming out anywhere in your life, how do you feel, or do you think that we could work better to make it an environment where people feel more comfortable?
I would say probably just letting them know that it's okay, they're perfectly normal. Just be supportive and understanding.
Are there things that could be sort of posted around that would help people? We had a campaign a few years ago, different placards that people could put up, or different signs they could put up, that said, we serve all who served, and there was a very sort of it was a muted but visible sort of rainbow sign on the dog tags that kind of mixed in with that. Do you think those sorts of gestures can help, or do you think there's more that we could do?
Well, it's really difficult to say because of the whole political stance right now. But when I was up in Boston for my son's science conference, when I went downtown to get something to eat, you saw the LGBT flag in windows, you saw the trans flag in windows, and just them being displayed, I was more likely, and in fact I actually did eat at one displaying the trans flag, just because I knew there wasn't going to be any issues or anything like that.
And so, switching gears, another finding from our studies beyond the prevalence or the frequency of housing instability was looking at how many people use services in VA that are designed to help them navigate and overcome housing instability. And so we found that among a lot of different programs that there are in VA, that transgender veterans were more likely to be getting one or more services in VA, and there were a couple that were very much used at a very much higher rate for transgender veterans than non-transgender veterans who had all screened positive for housing instability in VA. Do you have any insights or any thoughts about sort of different services, or what might work well with services for folks?
I I think that really depends on what their needs are. I know when I needed the service, I went to the support group, and they referred me to the homeless program here, and also Veterans Leadership Program. And I didn't have much luck with the VA program, but the Veterans Leadership Program I did.
Could you talk a little bit more about what the Veteran Leadership Program is and sort of what it was like?
Well, they have all kinds of different services for veterans.
Okay.
Right now, for my particular case anyway, they are looking into helping me get my vehicle fixed. They're covering my rent until I can get back on my feet. And they're also helping me with a kind of like a budget or a spending plan, doing a credit type, or not necessarily credit, but
just sort of like a monthly budget or sort of.
Yeah.
Right.
And showing me where I can pinch here, put it here, all that kind of stuff. And they actually had when I became essentially homeless, they had, I think it took like maybe 24 hours, and they had me in one of the Project Journey houses.
Okay. What was that process like? Is it?
Basically, I just had to go to the office, we did paperwork, talk to them, and it was either a shelter or one of the Journey houses. And because of, well, being transgender, and obviously we're going to be on the list of less welcomed, I'll say. And I'm not saying by the staff, but by other people in the shelter. They actually put me in the Journey house for safety.
So I'm hearing about the Veterans Leadership Program is that sort of there are different components, and and I think that what I'm hearing from your experience is that housing instability is sort of the one thing that we looked at in this study, but there are so many other things, and it's not just a one thing. It's never just one thing.
Right. When it rains, it pours.
Right, exactly. And thinking about so from a system, like thinking about the system and thinking about people like researchers, are there things or ideas that you want to share about telling people like me that this is sort of areas that could be improved, or these are things that happen to me or that I see that I really think that VA needs to be aware of?
I think that part of the problem the VA has is there are so many locations. You have to do a blanket policy for everything, or for everywhere. But the policy in Pittsburgh isn't going to work in New York. And New York isn't going to work in California.
What kind of policies, or what sort of...
Just your overall guidelines.
Okay.
Like, I forget what I had to do for the homeless section here. But we'll say I had to come in with 2 pay stubs, an eviction notice, and 2 places I tried to get housing at.
Okay.
Just to qualify, all right? Now, that might work here because of the influx of people. You're putting the priority first. But in, say, California, where you have a larger populace, that's not going to work because you got people living in tents under bridges there.
Right.
Not so much here.
Okay. I see what you're saying. So more of a sort of a tailored approach, and sort of being aware of the realities of the environment and the situation.
Yeah, it should be more geographical than blanket policy.
If you ran into a veteran in the hall and this person mentioned that they were having a hard time with housing, what would you tell them?
Well, it depends on if they are cisgendered or trans. If they're trans, then I'm going to refer them to probably our support team here, and also the homeless section, and also get them in contact with VLP.
And that's the Veterans Leadership.
Yes,
Program.
yes.
What were some of the things that worked well for you, and things that you sort of, if you look back, you're like, man, I wish I would have had this. I wish I would have known this.
Well, that depends how deep you want to go. I mean, I don't think you want to discuss medical stuff here, but just having the information would have been a great help. Even as my dad was Army, so even if he would have had access to the information, that would have helped me know what was going on as a kid.
Gotcha.
So it's just information getting out there.
And when you mentioned before, when you needed the services, how did you find the place to, or how did it, I guess, what was your pathway to finding the information that you eventually did get? Do you recall? For
the housing or the...
For housing.
That would have been through the support group.
Through support group?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. And could you say a little bit more about the support? Is it in VA?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So is there anything any thoughts that you might have that I didn't ask about, or any sort of advice or opinions or anything you want to share?
Just the only thing I can think of is that the housing issue isn't the only place in the VA that we're lacking in trans acceptability. It's really difficult to be comfortable with anybody when you're waiting in a waiting room and you're dressed as yourself, and they say, "John Smith."
That is going to be tough.
You're just like,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Are there, so thinking about, I guess, frontline staff and other sorts of support staff to providers or in the clinical system, so getting better training out to them about, how to welcome people into VA.
Well, I've had extensive discussions about that with different people.
Okay.
And because of HIPAA, they're not allowed to mark your chart. So they can't put a flag on it saying, "Hey, this is what this person needs called."
I see. So they could just be honestly saying this is what, and not knowing at all what's going on.
They're looking at your folder, and because your name isn't, because the name is your legal name and not your current name, they're going by that.
I see.
And there's no way to, they can put in the medical notes, person wants to be called D. But
the person in the front line might not.
They might not see that.
They might not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And without a flag or something on the chart, which goes against your HIPAA policy,
I see.
You can't do much.
Was name or sort of identification documents, was it ever a challenge in housing, when in your sort of pathway through housing?
As far as the VA, I don't think so. It was more so when I was out looking for the housing. Because again, you have to put down your legal name and all this, and people just say like, "Oh, well, whatever." And
was there did you work with a case manager at all whenever you were doing this?
Yes.
Did your case manager, how was that process, I guess?
It was great. VLP was on top of everything. I don't know, get irritated with them at times, just because they're like dragging their feet. as far as getting back to me or something like that. But I honestly, I talked to the lady here in the housing area once. She said she was going to get back to me. I tried calling 2 more times and never got a hold of her.
But you eventually did get into did you eventually get into services or get services that you needed after those attempts? Is that
Through the VA, no.
okay?
I actually got everything completed within 30 days with a leadership program.
Oh, VLP. Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
And if I remember correctly, when I was put in touch with both of them, if the VA can't help, VLP is almost guaranteed to. They have more funding.
Okay, so it's different from the VA.
Yes.
It's different
Yes.
From oh, okay.
Yes. It's Veterans Leadership Program, but it was originally a Vietnam Veterans Leadership Program.
Okay. And is that within, like, but did they, I guess, talk with the VA? Or they kind of?
I'm not sure. I think they're their own entity.
Okay.
But they fall under, I think, like, they get their funding from the United Way, I think.
Well, I guess, is there anything else that you might want to add or share? Any last thoughts? Or?
Can't really think of anything.
Well, thanks.
No problem.